Today we're going to talk about CES 2022. A lot of companies made promises and we're going to find out did they keep them or not. Basically what this video is going to be all about. All right, so let's start off with Sony. What did Sony promise at CES 2022? What did they really go all in on? And that was mini LED. And to me, when I look at mini LED technology, I like the strides that mini LED has made in the last couple of years. And it seemed like Sony was really pushing that they had the next evolution of it with the backlight master drive plus mini LED. They were really going all in on mini LED in their presentation. So it made it feel like that's what they were banking on. And they really put their money into that kind of technology, it seemed like, for their LCDs. That's what they were pushing for their X90K flagship 4K and their flagship 8K Z9K. But with this, it didn't feel like when it came out that it was much different than any other mini LED TV. It felt like after all the conversation that Sony had about this backlight master drive, we got a lot of mixed reviews on this TV. But the one thing that was clear about this is that this was not something that was evolutionary in the mini LED space. And it really just felt like it was just another mini LED TV. Nothing special. There was nothing special about the backlight master drive, and they hyped it up. They really did hype it up in this presentation for CES, and it made it feel like that's what they were going to take to the next level, but that's not what we got. And now I understand that the bigger sizes, the 85-inch has gotten really good reviews. It is using a different panel maker overall, so maybe that's why that is the case, but I can't just forgive it for one size, 65, 75 inch, kind of a letdown when you look at the price and then you compare it to the competition. The QN90B is much cheaper, and in a lot of people's eyes, it's a better performer overall than the X95K. So on that note, I think Sony's presentation was very much a letdown for me, and I feel like they underdelivered for their CES promises of 2022. Now, that's not the only thing they talked about in CES. Of course, they talked about the A90K, which came out and got rave reviews, and it ended up being probably the best TV of the year when you're talking about picture quality overall, right? But it just wasn't the best value of the year. And I don't think many people actually went out there and bought that TV based on the reviews, especially when you can go and get something like the S95B, which kind of matches the performance for a lot less. And so I do feel like there is a market for the A95K, and I understand their pricing strategy for that, especially with everything they put into the build quality and the body itself, but it still does feel overpriced, much like the X95K just feels really overpriced when you look at it compared to the QN90B. So I think this is one of the biggest things I have about Sony is I feel like their pricing is just not aggressive enough and not competitive enough with the actual marketplace that is going on with TVs. And I think as a result of that, they probably fell from the first place of last year as being some of the more popular TVs out there to being like the third most popular among the big three. And in 2022, to have just two HDMI 2.1 ports and one of them shared with the EARC port, that in its own right is another disappointment for 2022. So yeah, I think Sony definitely needs to step it up in 2023. All right, moving on to Samsung. Now, Samsung was one of the ones that really came out and just pumped up the QN90B as being a really good step up from the QN90A, making the local dimming better with the new backlight system, as well as doing some extra processing features, which they actually did a really good job on with the QN90B. Now, there is a lot to be said about the QN90B from the QN90A. While not everybody agrees that it's the best upgrade in the world, I do think that there was a significant step up from the QN90A to the QN90B when I seen it, especially in the local dimming area with game mode in mind. There was a lot less backlight delay, and I also felt like the backlight system was just more precise and more OLED-like than ever when it came to the actual performance of the TV. When it comes to the mini LED technology, I don't think it's quite all the way refined yet, but Samsung is kind of leading the pack when it comes to pushing that technology to its maximum ability. So I really like the QN90B. I think they delivered that very well. And I think the QN85B was something that I can really say was a great step up as well. For being an ADS panel, it actually competed with the QN90B, which I found kind of mind-blowing, to be honest with you. And when these two TVs are straight on viewing, you can barely tell them apart, except for in certain scenes where the Q90B definitely gets brighter. Now beyond that, I'd love to say something about the S95B here, but at CES 2022, we didn't even know the S95B was going to be a thing this year. We knew they were going to do QD-OLED, but they didn't want to talk about it, and they didn't want to ever market it. They didn't even announce it until after CES. So we didn't know what the price was going to be, and it ended up being a really good deal for a lot of people, and most people's favorite TV this year. For the price, it's hard to beat. But after all, this is a CES recap, so I can't give them any points there because they didn't talk about it that much. The other thing they did with CES 2022 was with the frame, making it a new matte finish. And a lot of people who really dig the frame said this change was absolutely great. And they really like that matte finish. It makes it feel more like a painting. And for that aesthetic that the frame goes with, Samsung just knocked it out of the park with those people. So if I have any negatives to say about Samsung at the CES conference on if they over-delivered or underperformed, really, I think they did deliver most of their products to be what they are supposed to be. Now, everything that comes afterwards is not what I'm grading them on right now. I'm just talking about their CES presentation and the launch of the product. I think they really did step it up in 2022. The biggest downside with Samsung, and I think everybody would probably agree with this, is the new Tizen OS is a complete disaster when it comes to the design choices that they made with the menu being full screen. It just doesn't work anymore with the one remote. The one remote concept is just not working with the new Tizen system. Before, it was really easy to switch inputs, really easy to get in and out of things, but now it's just kind of a headache. Sometimes there's just too much delay on things. It just feels unnecessarily laggy. And one of the things that's really important to TV buyers is going to be the user experience. Out of the big three TV companies, I feel like Samsung is kind of the worst when it comes to the user experience of the TV. That means the UI, the menu system, the remote, just the navigation in general this year was a big step back, because I do think before they had a really good system going on with the one remote and Tizen, but it's just really bad now. There's no other way to put it. And next, we're going to talk about LG. Now, LG went into CES talking about LG OLEDs, as they should, because that is their, big ticket item. This is what they are known for. To be honest, nobody really talks about LG for their LCD TVs, and as of late, their LCD TVs have been pretty lackluster and nothing to really write home about. So yeah, of course, OLED is the main focus here. And at CES, they talked about the new Brightness Booster Max technology that was going into their G series OLEDs. And this was something they really were banking on, really working out for them this year. Much like the A90J of last year featuring a heatsink, LG promised that the G2 would be equipped with a heat dissipation technology built into it that will serve to allow for better peak brightness and just overall a better, more efficient experience with the LG G2. And I have to say they really did deliver, because the LG G2 is definitely a fantastic TV in that respect. It can get very bright with the white highlights, and it is something that I think does kind of stand out from the C2 in a lot of scenes. Now overall, I don't think there's a huge jump between the C2 and the G2, but they definitely delivered on their promise of it being the brightest OLED that they have produced yet. So I have to give that up to them. Now, one thing LG promised was a improvement in processing, and they were really talking about their new Dynamic Tone Mapping Pro option. Now, Dynamic Tone Mapping has been something that really feels the same, to be honest with you, from year to year. So I was really hoping for that step up. The Dynamic Tone Mapping Pro, I thought that was going to be something a lot better than it ended up being. But unfortunately, you have to have AI Picture Pro on in order for it to work. And unfortunately, AI Picture Pro just doesn't always work. And in some content, it won't turn on at all. So AI Picture Pro is still really hit or miss. And it doesn't feel like it's in the same realm as the Sony processing features that are built into the TV. Because most of the things are just on by default. But I don't think LG wants to push it on everybody by default. So they just give you the option to toggle. But unfortunately, the AI Picture Pro just doesn't work all the time. And so for that, I do feel like they underdelivered, because this Dynamic Tone Mapping Pro and then also the depth enhancer that they were talking about for their TVs, I didn't feel like really stuck out to me, because the C2 to the C1, I didn't really see a huge difference. And the processing, you can tell, is a little bit better, but it's not night and day difference. The only thing that's night and day difference is probably the motion, which I'll give them that. They definitely improved. But I feel like with processing, they have a long ways to go still, and I hope to see more improvements on that front in the future. Now, the other thing that LG was talking about is on the LCD front, and that was their QNED 90 and their QNED 99 8K. So I think, we all know where that went. We didn't see it at all. So they scrapped that completely. So I have to give them a failing grade on their LCD department. Now, they did have the QNED 85, so maybe we'll bump it up to the D, because some people actually really like the QNED 85, which seems to perform very similar to last year's QNED 90. So that makes me think that the QNED 90 was going to be a big step up from the 90 of last year, or maybe it wasn't, and that's why they pulled it. I don't know. Should they continue on the LCD front? So what do you guys think? From the big three, did these companies really deliver on their promises, or were they a letdown? Let me know what you guys think in the comments below. I appreciate you guys watching this video. If you want to see more videos from me, check out the one right here.